Hey guys, welcome. Today I just want to talk about the project I've been working on for a little bit with the help of Jason.
Hi, my name is Jason and I'm here to talk about my Goonies custom visual pinball machine. This is a project that I started back in 2010. I read an article in Maximum PC talking about visual pinball and I was hooked. So I know visual pinball machines are pretty common today, but the reason I'm making this video is this one is unique in the fact that it's not running Windows. Instead, it's running Batocera Linux and Visual Pinball Standalone. I'm a Mac guy, and I've always wished Visual Pinball could run on it. So over the past year and a half, we got it working on Mac, Linux, iOS, Android, and then tvOS. We even have builds for Raspberry Pi and Orange Pi 5. As for the software, we're using Batocera 39 Beta. Visual Pinball Standalone has been included starting in Batocera 38. The Visual Pinball devs have made a ton of improvements, so the beta is using a much more recent build.
With special guest, Jason. Hey, what's going on, Jason?
Hi, how you doing? Great to be here.
I'm very good. Well, thanks for being here. We've chatted a lot in the last little while trying to get this little project on the go and finally putting a face to the name. That's amazing. That's a great background you got there, man. You've got so much room. You're a lucky one.
Very fortunate. I spend all my time out here now, all my free time. So,
is that where you built your virtual pinball cabinet?
yes, yeah. We did most of the work here, and we did a lot of work at my brother's garage that he works in. So,
you are very, very active in a project that we're going to talk about today, Batocera. But before we do, I want to talk about basically the core of what's making Batocera so interesting for us, which is VPX Standalone. Can you explain what VPX Standalone is and how important it is? It's kind of a big deal, actually.
yeah, so VPX Standalone is a version of Visual Pinball that we've been working on for almost like it's starting to get into 2 years. The idea is that it's just a player and it's meant to be cross-platform so that it runs on Mac, it runs on Linux, it runs on Android devices, iOS devices, tvOS. So we're trying to make it run everywhere. So everybody who's interested in pinball, no matter what device they have, they should be able to give this a try.
Now, are there some devices that are actually more kind of are limited because of the nature? For example, a phone, right, doesn't have a lot of RAM.
Well, it's really surprising if you were to use, one of the later iPhones or iPads or even the Galaxy and the Pixel devices, you'd be surprised how well it actually runs. When it's running on mobile, it's using OpenGL ES 3.0. And it's surprising how well it runs. It struggles on things like the Raspberry Pi. I think there's lots of ways to make improvements, but it's getting there. It's still early days on that stuff.
Like when we're running virtual pinball on a cabinet, it's running Windows. It has ties to the operating system, the registry, and it needs different programs to make it run. What makes the standalone different?
Standalone is kind of you download it as one binary, and it has everything in it. So there's no real need to install other software. And when I say everything in it, it's missing lots of things, but we're getting there. But for example, now we have Flex DMD support, we have B2S support. Some tables like Blood Machines use like a WMP player, and we kind of ported just the important parts of that over so it can play the audio tracks.
So, for example, let's say someone wants to play on their iPhone.
If Apple would allow emulators in the App Store, then we would be able to release this, in there. But the problem is that because we have PinMame in there, that instantly basically classifies it as an emulator. So they would deny it. I was kind of hoping with all these new regulations that they were going to change the App Store around that would allow this to kind of happen. So far, it hasn't seemed to work out that way. So people use something called Alt Store. And Alt Store is totally legitimate. You don't need to jailbreak your device. What happens is everybody who has an Apple ID can sign up for a developer account that you don't have to pay money for. So what happens is you rebuild the app like using a program called AltStore, and it'll basically deploy it to your phone and keep it fresh every couple days.
I've done it myself on Android. It's pretty simple. You download the APK, and then once you've got the APK on there, all you need to do is use the web server, and then you connect, and then you just kind of transfer tables, and you're done.
Yep. Yeah, the hardest part about mobile is since they're so locked down, how do you get files on it? So
Right.
most emulators do that web server approach. So that's what we basically borrowed for this. Somebody mentioned in one of the forums that they've been working on a file browser for Android for this. So you'll actually be able to just select the games whether it's on internal storage or external storage. So
What is Batocera?
Batocera is a Linux distribution that has a whole bunch of emulators already pre-installed on it. So the idea is you download it and then you flash it to a USB drive or an an SD card, and then you put it in and your machine starts up and you have all these emulators at your disposal. There's no it doesn't come with ROMs on it. It has a couple games that are open source, for emulators just to get you started. The barrier to entry into emulation, it really like reduces our way down. And
What got you involved with VPX Standalone and Batocera? Like, how did that kind of merge?
well, it's kind of funny. My wife and son go to the place for Taekwondo. Their instructor was interested in emulators, and he had one of those little Nintendo systems that someone had, put together. We were talking about it, and when I was looking online for just, trying to find what would be a good distro to kind of set up on here, I found Batocera. So I started playing with that, and at the same time, I'm in a pinball league in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and they were going to have a show outside of the league, just a pinball event. I said, with this Batocera that I saw, I'm like, man, this could be the front end that I've finally been waiting for, what I'm working on, and we could tie this all together. After I saw that, one of the developers from Batocera reached out and said, hey, we were starting to get VPX Standalone in. There are a couple things that, we could get changed. And we just started working and chatting through Discord, and now it's in Batocera 38. 39 beta is out. At 40 should be out. I mean, 39 should be out very shortly. And then 40 will start putting in more improvements and all that. So
I haven't been that excited since my involvement in virtual pinball like 10 years ago. It's seriously in the virtual pinball world. That's a dream come true. We can leave Windows behind.
yeah, well, that's the goal someday. The thing of being able to just install it on a USB drive and try it out. I mean, there's no harm in trying it out. You don't have to worry about, ruining your system or whatever. It's just you're playing. And once people start to play and see the performance, even on older hardware, I think people will be surprised. So
I was not too familiar with Batocera. I'd heard the name, but then I started installing and playing with it. What people may recognize is that the actual Batocera is the operating system. The front end using the pinball is Emulation Station. So people that are used with RetroPie, Raspberry Pi, that are using like all these emulator, this is what it's using. So
yeah, and there's so many options for themes, and you can customize things. So, I mean, I know there's, all these great front ends, right now for Windows and all that, but this is just something that gives, more choice, a little bit different take on things. So
my test cabinet, it's not finished, but I've got my 3 screens in there, and I've got my buttons, and I've got the launch here, and then it's functional, everything works. So for people to get that going, how do we start? Like we download Batocera first, obviously, right?
Yeah, so the idea is you want to go and preferably start with 39 beta. You want to get the latest. You'll download the image file, and then you'll use a program Etcher to write the image to the drive that you want to install it on. So if you want to put it on a USB key or a micro SD card, whatever you want to do that you can put into your computer to get it to boot. Later on, you can actually take the key and say you had everything exactly like you wanted it installed, and it's pristine. You could then take that USB key and make an image from that, and then store that somewhere on a drive so that you have it. So if anything ever happened, you could always restore that image. Starting off with a smaller key is definitely the way to go.
Do you think it's actually going to be as fast running on a USB key than it would be on an internal drive?
No, yeah, you definitely want to eventually get to the internal drive.
Gotcha.
There's a feature that actually will load the files off of a share. So what a lot of people do is they'll have many different Batocera devices in their house, and they all load off of a share.
I'm thinking it would have had some latency, right?
Considering VPX tables are huge these days, the newer releases are enormous. Yeah, I could see that. But at the same time, Wi-Fi is getting faster. These
That's
machines
true.
are getting
That's true.
faster. So, but I will tell you, like what I do on my cat, since it is Linux, I can easily do an rsync and copy the entire contents of the folder, of the ROM folder, to my Mac. And then from my Mac, I use something called rclone, which puts it up into Google Drive. So I keep a copy safe in the cloud, and and I'm just typing in one command to do that all. I don't have to like type a whole bunch of things in and start looking, is this file different? Did this change? Did that change? So
We got Batocera flashed on our key. So next we need to actually put it on the computer, and then we need to boot. Now, a couple of things that folks may need to actually set in their BIOS. Secure boot, right? I believe has to be turned off, and UEFI needs to be enabled.
sometimes too, like it'll actually pop up a prompt and say, do you want to enable this? So like the newer machines are smart, like they're smart enough to know that it needs the secure boot.
And then once you launch this, then it will actually kind of auto do its thing, right? It will repartition. It will you'll see it kind of rebooting. It's not long, and once it's actually done, you'll see the Batocera screen on your monitor.
Yeah, and then you're ready to go. And then comes all the fun stuff.
We've got a 3-screen setup. Is Batocera going to show up on the 3 screens and ready to go?
The system is really designed for one screen. Emulation Station was designed for one screen. The great thing about it being Linux, all the tools are already there, just waiting to be tapped into. So there's a couple different command line utilities and stuff that you'll have to run. What you have to do is like kind of figure out what configuration your screens are in. Once you run some commands, what's going to happen is you're basically going to just extend your desktop into one big giant desktop.
And then, for example, your playfield will be the one on the far left, your backglass will be the one on the right of it, and then your DMD would be on the right of the backglass, just like on a regular Windows setup.
And Batocera has menu options, like automatically, like right in the menu to figure out which screen is going to be your main screen. If you have your displays plugged in and all of a sudden you notice that Batocera's screen's on your backglass, you can easily go into the menu and say, no, I want it to be like HDMI 3. Right. And then I want the screen to be rotated 270 degrees. And then that becomes your main screen in Batocera and Emulation Station.
Now, for folks that would like to try this, Jason on his GitHub has actually the steps. He spent a lot of time actually, he's tweaking them all the time. We're not going to cover all this today because that would be like a very long video. But basically, we're going to talk about the steps today. And for the details, you can refer back to his guide. I guess before we run any games, it's important to have your layout set up. We're going to need a special file to tell Batocera to basically enable multiple display.
Yes, so it has the concept of like services and scripts that it can automatically run on startup. In my setup, for example, I'm turning on 3 different televisions, and I have to wait 10 seconds with the Pinscape controller before it'll like send the IR signals to turn on the DMD TV and the backglass TV. Since they kind of take a little bit to get fired up, that script you're talking about, we have a custom SH shell script, and it kind of has like a sleep command right at the beginning to just wait a couple seconds until everything gets set up, Batocera gets its main screen configured, and then from there, we extend the display to the backglass, and then we extend it to the DMD screen. Then after that, you can run other commands, like something we have called VPX DS to change the backglass image when you start selecting games.
Basically, in that custom.sh file, you're going to tell the system your mother's ID, right? So if it's HDMI, if you have a display, so everybody will have different numbers, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And there are commands to run, and then it's clearly explained on your website. And just populate the files just like you show on your website, and put that in the system folder.
Yes. Yeah, there's the main command that you're gonna end up learning how to use is something called xrandr or xrandr, and it's a very powerful tool. It will, it has like a 1,000 options, but it'll basically give you, what displays are connected, what rotation, what resolutions are available, what hertz are available, the refresh rates and all that. So that tool will become your friend.
Now we got a 3-screen setup. It works well. We're all happy. And next thing we need to put games on that thing, right?
All the game systems in Batocera have a ROMs folder. Since games are basically considered ROMs, and we have to consider that Visual Pinball, the tables are ROMs. And not to be confused with PinMame ROMs that go with the tables, but for the purpose of Batocera, a table will go into a ROMs directory.
The easiest thing is just to start with a folder and name it ACDC, for example.
Yeah, so you'll put the VPX file in there. Then if you want to have backglass, you're going to take your direct B to S file, and you're going to make sure that it's the same name as the VPX file. We don't support the fuzzy name matching that Windows version has. So for right now, you have to put in, make sure it's the same identical name. Some backglasses will be like small direct capital B2S.
Yes.
And then others are just lowercase. So we just kind of chose the lowercase for extensions, since that's kind of how most extensions are. Just make a PinMame folder inside of the same directory where the table is, where the VPX file is. And then in there, it's your standard PinMame folder structure that you're used to in Windows. So there'll be a ROMs directory, an NVRAM folder,
config. So there's no central folder for vpinmame. Each table will have its own vpinmame folder and substructure.
Yes, and again, it doesn't have to, but it's just
it's easy.
This is, and it helps keep things organized. I mean, that's how I like it anyway. I think there's one other file we should probably talk about. There's a VBS file for the table, where we're using the VB script engine from Wine. It works fantastic, but it does have some quirks. If you download a new table, usually the new tables already know about the quirks and it just runs right out of the box. But if you have a table and it instantly crashes the minute you start it, that usually means that there's a VB script error. We have a repo set up where there's some VB script patches for some of the most popular older tables, and you can grab the VBS file from there and you can put it in the directory. That's a pretty important file.
Yep.
That repo is a whole bunch of people have been submitting tables and patches and stuff. So it's not my work. I in the very, very beginning, I put a lot of the tables in, and now all of a sudden, I don't even feel like I own the repo because everybody else has been doing the work.
Putting stuff.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah,
that's a good thing.
Yep.
Now we got the tables, we've got the folder structure. So that's for ACDC. What do we do with that folder?
There's a user data ROMs folder in Batocera, and there'll be a vPinball folder inside of that ROMs folder, and that's where you put all your tables inside of there.
What's the easiest way, you think, to actually transfer the tables over?
Yeah, there's many ways to do it. I use a program called FileZilla, and FileZilla has, you basically just put in the IP address, put in the username, and then the minute you hit connect, it'll ask you for the password. The password is just Linux on all Batocera installs. You get right into the folder structure, and you can drag and drop everything you want in there. So,
I've actually tried two different ways. The first way that I've done, actually, I like the network discovery on my Mac. I do everything on my Mac as well, so I've got my files. folder discovery, it sees Batocera. I open that, it sees share, and then you double click it, and you can see your folder structure, and then that's where you can kind of, change stuff. And I take my folder and I drag it, and
Yeah.
that's one way to do it. The other way that I've tried is I copy the stuff on a USB key. I plug the USB key on the computer, and then once you've got that connected, you press F1 on Batocera, on your keyboard, and it will open up like a file browser, and then you'll see your external hard drive, and you can just move the files within that operating system. So it's pretty good too.
Yeah, that's good to know about. I didn't realize it showed up in Discovery on a Mac. So
once we've got the file in there, we need to refresh the game list in order for the system to pick it up.
yeah, as you add more files into that folder, it just won't show up on the screen. If you drop like a piece of artwork in the folder, like that kind of stuff will get automatically picked up. There's an option that just says refresh game list. One thing that someone had mentioned too is there's interest in actually having like an open source table that could be like seeded onto Batocera.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
There would be one there that when you be automatically discovered and all that. So so that might happen someday.
Before we can even play that, we need to have some buttons. You can use a keyboard, typically the keyboard, the shift or the flipper. You have buttons on your system.
Yes.
I have buttons on mine. We have two different systems that we've set up.
Right now, I'm using a Pinscape controller that I got all the parts for, and I got the board for, and soldered all the parts in and all that. And the Pinscape is like totally default settings right now. The only thing that was modified was I needed to send that IR signal to turn on my televisions. All the keys are all the factory keys. So, when I built my harness from the Pinscape, I tried to make sure that, I used the left and right flipper or the shift keys, so, and I kept that all the same, because I didn't want to have to, right out of the box, have to go configure a whole bunch of things if somebody wanted to give this a try and already had a Pinscape. That's how I have mine set up. Using the flippers to select games in Batocera, that you can edit the Emulation Station input file, and you can get that to trigger all the games when you hit the flippers to go through the list and all that.
So it's mine. I'm using a zero delay board. People that are in the arcade world probably heard of a zero delay board. It's a cheap plug-in USB controller, and then you plug all your buttons, and then once you go in the Batocera controller configuration menu, you hold this and it will see it, and then what you decide what you want, left, right, start and select and so on, and then once you start the game, it will see the buttons automatically and it will work.
We actually have on that website is we have a little fragment of XML that you can just drop in and then right off then your buttons are already configured and you don't really need to walk through that process. So
are we then ready to launch the game, Jason, or do we have to do something else?
Yeah, I think there might be just a couple more steps that we need to do. Since we're in cabinet mode, we need to go into the vPinball X INI file and do a couple setting changes. So there's an entry called BG set that if you set it to 1, that will basically set it into cabinet mode. Out of the box, it would be in desktop mode. So you'd fire the game up and it'll just be in desktop mode, and you want it in cabinet mode. So.
Do you recall on top of your head where that file is?
Yes. Yes, there's a user data, system, configs, vPinball.
Yeah.
And then vPinball X.ini.
It's in there. Yeah.
Yep. But one thing to note, if you're ever playing a game and you're in the middle of a game and you want to change the file, make sure you quit VPX, because what'll happen is you'll quit the game and your changes will be lost. So traditionally, Visual Pinball setting was all in the registry. And when we started working on Standalone, Toxie changed all that to support an INI file, and it was life-changing, because Windows version now uses it for 10.8, and it's really evolved into something. So there have been some patches into Batocera where now there's a menu that you can find that you can actually go in and tweak a lot of settings via the menu. So it's getting there where it will be a lot easier to edit that file without having to manually go in there.
Yeah, that's good. And one big difference, Windows versus Linux, Linux does not use a registry. Linux is a file base. So for example, all your settings that would be in a registry are in that INI file. So that's kind of I think it's a good way, honestly.
Oh yeah, it's I think initially when it kind of started off too, the file was in XML, and then it evolved into an INI file, and it's it's awesome being an INI file. So that file probably needs some work in terms of documenting, what things are what, because it's just a file with a bunch of options in it. But and it's the same file that works in Windows. You could transfer it over to Linux, even iOS and the mobile versions even support that INI file. If the INI file doesn't exist, what happens is on the very first run of Visual Pinball, it will actually take the default file, and copy it into the folder for you, so it's there. Yep.
So on the Mac, for folks that actually want to try that on the Mac, the INI file is hidden. That will show all your hidden files, and it's in your user directory, and then you will see .vpinball, and the .ini is within that folder. Honestly, I gotta say, I got the M1 chip. It's a newer Mac, and it runs the tables like the latest VPW tables without a glitch. It is snappy.
That chip is an impressive chip. So I hope they just keep it going. But the Mac app, give a little bit of background on it. Before it used to be you downloaded it from GitHub, and then you had to like change the permissions to to allow it to be executable and all this kind of stuff, and it was too hard for just somebody to download. So now it's a true signed app. We sign it with the developer account. You download it, you can drop it right in applications, and you can actually just double click a VPX file and it'll start playing the game.
Still need to keep the same ROM structure or the same folder structure for the game that we talked about. Now, once we've got all that set up and we've got the BG to 1, and then we're actually able to launch the game, we just go in the menu and click the game, and it will launch, right? And it should play flawlessly.
Yeah, well, that's what we hope for. Yep. If it instantly crashes, I hate to really give someone a bad experience, but it's usually a VB script error.
Yes. The actual gameplay, I gotta say, it like you would not notice like that. If I play on my regular cabinet versus this, it's identical. Yeah.
That's good to hear, because I know there's a lot of diehard Windows people, and Emulation Station has this whole concept of launching scripts whenever you do something in the menu. So as you're selecting a game or you're selecting a system, you can launch a script. So what we do is that anytime someone selects a game, not starts it, but just goes through the menu, we just send a little command to the VPX DS program, and that loads the backglass and shows it on the screen. Batocera will actually launch a little web server that you can hit a special web page, and you can actually start and stop games, and you can upload new metadata. The VPX DS just leverages that and talks to it. VPX DS can do a little bit more than just show a backglass. It has some features to capture backglasses too, because the backglass that I like might not be the backglass that you like. What it does is it has features: capture the backglass, capture the table, make a little video of the table, capture the DMD area. It's all integrated in there, and then it'll just save the files that Emulation Station knows how to use, and that's how you can create your backglasses.
If people drop in the image folder within the folder structure, if they have the image named the same thing as the table, that's when they can actually get Batocera to automatically load those images.
So you just name it the same name as the table, and it can be like a PNG or a JPEG, but what you'll do is you'll give it a different suffix. So for example, or hyphen image, hyphen video,
hyphen marquee.
Yeah, we use marquee, and we're probably going to do the same with backglasses. I guess the recommended approach is to use box, because from Legacy,
Yes.
RetroPie, and Emulation Station, box art would be considered like the back glass. So
Yeah. Like when you're loading the web interface, you can see that the table is actually loaded, and then it'll show you progress table loaded, and it'll give you the name and a couple of buttons, and then you click, and it saves your files, and then you exit, and you've got all your art on your front end. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was built out of necessity, because when I was trying to make that show, I wanted to load up. I had a goal of 100 tables. I wanted to load them up, and I did not want to sit out here and go through each one. So I was able to sit on my couch, hit play, hit, capture, go to the next one. So I totally, overestimated how much work it really was to do 100 at once.
Oh,
but,
it's a lot of work. So I've been playing on this thing for about 2 weeks now, and I really, really like it. I like that it's simple. What are the things that you're working on right now that actually are kind of missing on the Batocera distro?
An easy setup for the multiple screens. I think it's all possible, and all the tools are already there. Like Batocera has so many scripts already built in to figure out monitors and resolutions, and like it's all there. It's just sitting there and gluing it all together. The community's starting to get involved and working on making interfaces in there. So hopefully someday there'll be, something to easily handle that portion. As far as standalone in general, biggest things that I hear from everybody are PUP and DOF. And, I want them just as bad as everybody else does. And there's already a PR on PUP. We'll finally get that merged, and, we'll just hopefully start, getting it all implemented.
What's a PR?
PR is in GitHub. When you start to make code up, what you can do is you can submit a pull request, and that's basically your code. We can work on it together and get it merged into Visual Pinball. So,
what would you like to see? Would you like to see more folks kind of jumping in this and trying to help out?
oh yeah, that would be awesome. Anybody who loves to code or is new to coding and wants to tackle something, there are so many resources today to help. I've been coding forever, but I'll tell you, I love using ChatGPT for stuff. I don't have it write all my code for me, but trying to figure out how to convert a RGB 24-bit image to something that can go on a DMD, like that. Those are things that would probably take me forever to do. And now it's in the matter of an hour to understand, because it tells you, explains it in easy terms. Menuing systems, there's this great tool called VPX tool. That's a command line tool that can be like a text launcher that you can use on all different platforms. So any tools, utilities, help with the big things like PUP and DOF, anything that anybody feels like they want to work on, I think that would be awesome.
Where people can get a hold of you?
So we have a channel in a Discord channel, our virtual pinball chat, and it's the VPX Standalone channel. And we try to answer questions, as soon as we can. There's tons of people in there now, and everybody's taking turns answering questions. So Discord kind of opened the doors to many things in a way, being able to share files, code snippets, video clips. It's amazing. So
so thank you for sharing that with us, Jason. Thank you for your development, man. That's really appreciated. That thing's amazing. Thanks for your time, Jason. I'll see you around.
Thank you. Thanks.